Good evening. This is Laws 11046. It's Law in the Environment. It's week 4. It's what I like to call Share Your Secrets Week. By that I mean I'm interested in knowing how you go about legal research. Have you come across some things that would be of use and interest to other students? And let's share some ideas and some guidelines. Now, at this stage, I expect that you're all comfortable with OSTLE, but I'll go through that briefly. And I'm going to go through a few other things. I'll put this up on the share screen facility so you can see what I've got in mind for tonight. And hopefully now you are able to see my week 4 notes. If you just give me a nod if that's the case. All right. So Share Your Secrets Week. So I'm just going to show you some things about OSTLE, the eCourts search facility, and the Queensland Government Department of State Development website. So let's launch into that now. So hopefully you're still seeing my screen page. There should be Google, and I'll go to OSTLE first. So AUSTLII, and I suspect that you're all comfortable and familiar with that. So let's see if we can find something about the Sustainable Planning Act. So firstly, cases and legislation will bypass Commonwealth and all the states. Will go down to Queensland. From Queensland, I'm interested now in legislation. I might have been interested in case law, and you'll see that all of the case law is there. Of relevance is the Queensland Planning and Environment Court decisions. But let's have a look at the legislation first. So Queensland legislation, consolidated acts, you'll see that there are different things that you can search for, including regulations or historical acts. You can search by number if you wish, but I'll just go through the Queensland Consolidated Acts link. So again, just A to Z, Sustainable Planning Act is what I'm after, and we'll see that's just down the bottom hiding. Click on that, and here we have the Sustainable Planning Act. You'll see that the sections are numbered. One of the reasons I like OSTLE as opposed to the official site is that I can go directly to a section by clicking on the link if I want to. Let's do some inquiries about IDAS, which we'll see if we can find that. Here we are. Chapter 6 deals with the Integrated Development Assessment System, IDAS. What is it, regulations, etc. So if you want to know what IDAS is, we just click on that section. Comes up with the actual section of the legislation. One thing I often do is I go to the relevant chapter and then I read each section progressively using this button here called Next. Then we have categories of development under the Act, and you're probably all becoming familiar with some of these terms now. So categories of development are exempt development, self-assessable development, development requiring compliance assessment, accessible development, and prohibited development. So they're the 5 types of categories. And just while I'm here, I'll just say that all development is exempt unless it is one of these things. Right, so let's move on to the next one, where it makes reference to regulation can prescribe categories, relationship between town planning schemes, etc., and exempt development. Right, so we can just go back a bit and let's take this here. If I want to know some cases that relate to this particular section, one thing I use regularly is NoteUp, and there you'll see NoteUp provides a list of cases where this particular section was considered, and it's by relevance, meaning the most relevant is listed at the top. Now the section itself is nominated, that's 100% relevant. In this instance, I see that the lead entry is 25%. So that's not particularly relevant. What that tells me is that in relation to this section, in this case of Palethorpe against Public Trustee, the section was relevant, but it wasn't the most relevant part of the case. Let's click on it, and you'll see that Palethorpe against the public trustee is not really a case about town planning and environmental law. It's really a case about the Succession Act, where someone has challenged a will. It was determined in the trial division, not the Court of Appeal, but the trial division of the Supreme Court. The proceedings commenced by way of application, and this judgment was delivered in November after being heard in July by Her Honour Justice Philippides. Now, you'll see here there's a reference to the Sustainable Planning Act of 2009, and Section 232 is the one that we've accessed this case via, and you'll see the green arrows on either side highlight the fact that that's the thing that we were looking for when we accessed this case. And so, as I mentioned, this is really a case about the Succession Act, and I see that Rebecca Treston was the counsel for the applicant. She's now a QC dealing in succession law. All right, are there any questions about that? Any comments? Does anyone have any quicker ways of doing things? All right, if there are, just use the chat facility or feel free just to come in. Now, let's go back to, excuse my phone, let's go back to the section. You'll see there are other cases that are referred to there. This one here, Gold Coast City Council, may be a little bit more relevant to environmental law, seeing that the word sustainable is in the name of the defendant, and you'll see it's a local government case which deals with a few issues. All right, so that's all I really wanted to say about Austerlitz and in particular this note-up facility. All right, the next thing that I'd like to talk about is the eCourts search facility. Now, this is a really good way to find information about specific cases and specific defendants. More than just the actual decision of the court, it provides an insight into the way in which the case progressed. So I'm just going to type in here the website for Courts Queensland, which is useful, and you should go and have a look at that. So Courts website. Now, Queensland Courts, here's the home page. Now, you could find judgments. So we were looking for judgments in Austerlitz. You can find it through here, which is the authorised way of looking at judgments. There's some other interesting things here, a daily law list, which will tell you what's on for tomorrow. The court calendar will tell you what's scheduled into the future for different sittings of different judges. But what I'm really after now is the search of civil files, and I want to access court documents online. So let's have a look at that. All right, so here we have search civil files. It says it's for lawyers, but it's really for everybody. But I guess they figured that only lawyers are really interested in this sort of stuff. But it is very interesting. And there's a guide to searching. There's a list of available files. But what I'm interested in here is a party search. So I'm going to find out if the Fraser Coast Regional Council is or has been involved in any litigation. Now, this is interesting because it's not just completed litigation. It's not just what the judge ultimately decided, but it provides a snapshot progressively of the way in which the case progressed through the litigation process. And to some degree, it still deals with relevant current matters. So let's do a party search. And in the party search, you'll see that you can search by the proceedings category, the location, there's the drop down, or the court, district or supreme, but district will really be the Planning and Environment Court, and party details. Now, I'm interested in the Fraser Coast Regional Council, and there we have it. Oh, by the way, I've just used Dragon there, and I'm not sure if you've had a look at my video on Dragon, but each term I challenge the person who thinks they're the best typist in the class to a typing race. That'll happen in week 12. So if you think that you're a good typist, please feel free to nominate. I'll invite some votes in UCrew, and you can take me on in a typing test. And if you want to get an idea of how quick I can be with the voice recognition software, have a look at the video that I prepared and uploaded. Anyway, Fraser Coast Regional Council, let's see what they've been up to. And here we have the results of that particular party search, and it shows the individual cases where the council's involved. And I hope you can see that clearly on the screen. So this year we have application number 9, or matter number 9 of 2015, which is Knight against Fraser Coast Regional Council. You note that I said against. V is acceptable as well. What you don't do is say versus. It's just a rule that lawyers, if you say versus, it indicates that you're not really familiar with the way lawyers speak about cases. So I use and or against. So Knight against Fraser Coast Regional Council. But let's have a look at a list of them here, and if we want to find file number 4926 of 2013, which involves Byrne Brothers Pty Ltd, we can see it here. All right, so hopefully you can see that on the screen. No questions at this stage. All right. Now, if we expand by viewing the file details, we get an idea of, it's just thinking, it's coming up. We'll get an idea of what's actually happened in that case on the way through. So it's still buffering. It's a bit slow tonight. I don't know why. There it is. All right, so in this case, we have a list of where the case originated. So it was in Brisbane in December 2013. We have the name of the litigants, the names of the lawyers appearing for the litigants. We have the events, and then we have the documents. So let's have a look at the events. For example, we can see here that Judge Rackerman made an order in February of 2014, and there was a directions order made by Judge Everson in December of 2014. There have been various other orders by different judges, Judge Rackerman, Judge Everson, Judge Horniman-Wren, Judge Jones. So, and at the moment it's subject to a review in February, which has been done and listed for a further review in September of this year. All right, so that's a brief chronology of what's happened. Now, the more interesting part is down here, where... Hello, sorry, was someone wanting to ask a question? No, we're right. I'm getting some... I'm not sure, I'll just get people... I'm just going to ask you to put your audio on mute. I'm just muting a few of you. Sorry, Paul. And Reedon, because I'm getting some feedback. All right, so we're right now. So let's have a look at the documents. If you want to see what the originating application was, we can just click on that link, and it takes a few seconds to come up, and we can actually see the document that was prepared and filed by Conor O'Meara and filed in the court. Now, why am I showing you this? Well, it's a really good way of getting some idea of the way in which the litigation actually develops into a final decision of the court. And you can see the way that lawyers set out the documentation. You can see what the lawyers are asking for. You can see the grounds that are relied upon, and there's a reference to the law and the details of the litigant. Okay, and that really does follow, if you like, the usual way that lawyers write. And so it's a great way to pick up some precedents and get an idea of what's there. So that was the originating application. Now you'll see here a little further down that there was an order made amending the originating application, and that was done in July of 2014. Let's click on that, and you'll see here where the originating application was actually amended and the way lawyers do this. So that's the originating application amended. You'll see it's in red and it's underlined, and anything which is a change is now underlined and is in red. So I'm just circling things that you can see there, and you'll see that the claim, what's being sought, has been amended, and that's reflected in that amended document. All right, any questions so far? Okay, I'll just show you now the material is supported by affidavit. So here, for example, is a hearsay affidavit, I suspect, of one of the lawyers involved in the litigation, and it's taking a little while to come up because it's fairly large. So it's a really good way of having a look at the way in which the lawyers write, the way in which they refer to the law, rely upon the law, match the legal situation to the facts in question, and come to a conclusion. And a lot of this is written in a way which is familiar to you, I guess, by now. If you think back to the IRAC method, where we identify the issues, we identify the rules, we talk about how the rules are applied in a certain case, and we state a conclusion. So the application is like that, but in reverse, where the lawyer is trying to set out what should happen in this particular instance. Now, here's the affidavit of Stuart McNaughton. He's a partner at McCullough Robertson. It's what we call a hearsay affidavit. It's an affidavit that sets out, if you like, a chronology of what's happened in the case. It talks about what information has been given to the lawyer. It's a hearsay affidavit because rather than, here it says Steve Runge gave him some information, what he's really saying is, I was told by Mr. Steve Runge that this is the case. Now that's hearsay, but in certain circumstances, hearsay affidavits are acceptable, and this type of more procedural affidavit is an example of that. So in this affidavit, the lawyer is setting out what has happened, what are the relevant documents, what is outstanding, and what's new for consideration, and what's the latest information that he has received. Okay, so I think that's a really interesting way to get an idea of how litigation is progressing. Now, you won't find this type of file summary in all sorts of litigation, but you will find it in planning and environment court legislation. And part of the reason for that is that it is open then more easily for members of the public who are interested in the litigation to join us in as party to that litigation. All right, so are there any questions so far? Does anyone want to jump in, ask a question, make a comment, tell me that they found some easier way to source this material? Any of those sorts of things? All right, well, let's go to the next one that I'd like to show you, which is the Queensland Government Department of State Development website. And this website is really well constructed. There's talk about who we are, economic development, Coordinator General projects, so resumption notices, compensation, etc., applications and requests. But what I'm really interested to show you is resources. Now, if we look over here in resources, there's a whole lot of information which is very valuable. There's some flyers and fact sheets, and I'll show you some of those now. So I'll just go to the fact sheets first. These fact sheets can be for different areas or different types of practice. So if we look here, you'll find the up-to-date fact sheets in relation to the State Assessment and Referral Agency. And you'll see that there are regional office flyers. So for Wide Bay Burnett, you'll see a particular specific flyer in relation to State Assessment and Referral Agency for the Wide Bay. So that's a really easy way to get some information which is right up to date in terms of areas of relevance. The other tools that I want to show you down the bottom here, there's a whole lot of information which is really useful, but this one in particular I like. It's a bit similar to what I just showed you through the eCourts search facility, but it goes a little bit further. Let's have a look at the Planning and Environment Court Appeals database for, say, Cairns. We'll download those and you'll see, if you like, a summary of all the cases which are involving the Cairns Regional Council in the Court of Appeal, and it's got some information relevant to that case. So if we just select one here, Kazales from 2008, it will show you what documentation was relied upon in relation to it. So this was where McDonald's, the law firm in question, served a notice of appeal, which was in relation to the old Integrated Planning Act, which became superseded by the Sustainable Planning Act. And you'll see the notice of appeal and what was being sought by the lawyers on behalf of their client in that appeal. So I'm really interested in all this because it gives you a really good guide to learning how to go about doing these things if you're in the situation where you know what the law is, you know what the facts are, but then you ask yourself the question, how do I go about actually asking the court for the orders that I need in this particular case? So if we just go back to Cairns again, and you'll see that there are up-to-date materials in relation to this right up to 2014, and that's the originating application in this instance for the Catholic Church in relation to seeking a declaration for a proposed amendment to an originating application. All right, and that shows you the relevant material in relation to that case. Okay, so that's all I had to show you in terms of sharing my secrets in relation to some research, and I will now attempt to stop that share. Does anyone have any comments that they wish to make? So there's one question, is this where we need to get all our referencing from? Yes, you can reference from that. The referencing, I'll try and make it simple in this sense that where I do request referencing to be done, the main purpose is not to strictly follow the Australian Guide to Legal Citations or anything of that nature, but just to ensure that you have acknowledged that you sourced the material from somewhere else. And what that might mean is, for example, if there's a reference to a case or a paragraph in a case, then you might reference that. So there's a question, all right, that's all very interesting having these websites, but how do you use them for your assessment or your studies? Well, I think last week I showed you Hansard. I hope I did anyway. So that gives you some idea as to how the information comes into existence, the policy considerations before legislation was passed. This tonight was more in terms of how cases get to the stage where they ultimately become a judgment. So if you like, Hansard is the glimpse into what led to the legislation being enacted, legislation being one part of our law. And what I've showed you tonight is really a glimpse or an insight into what ultimately became a judgment, which is part of our common law. So it's not, I guess really it's a question of determining, yes, what's there, what has been decided. But if you wish to go further and look at the basis upon which it was argued that this should be the case, then I've given you some tools tonight to look at. Now, it may be that you don't use these tools. You may not see the need to do so. And one of the difficulties, of course, about law is that there are an enormous number of resources available, and sometimes it's a matter of selecting what you think is the most important part of the resource. But for example, if you're wanting to discuss a particular case, or you want to find out some background or know how something is done, then looking at those websites will provide some some useful background and context, I think, is probably how I would best describe it. All right, so there's no other questions on the chat facility. Before I finish tonight's recording, are there any questions on camera? All right. Well, is that one question coming through? I'll just unmute the microphone.
I was just wondering, like using Austlii and that, when you're actually referencing it and you're putting like the legislation in or the case, do you need to include that you got it from Austlii? Like how would you actually do that? Because it's not in the guide or anything.
Yeah, sure. When we're referencing case law or legislation, we typically wouldn't put in the website reference. We would normally make reference to the name of the case in the section. So it might be a reference to section 232 of the Sustainable Planning Act 2009. That's what I'm really interested in. I'm not really interested in the website link. So you don't need to put that in. But thank you for that. All right. Okay, are there any other questions, comments? Okay, well, we'll end the meeting now, and thank you for watching.